Welcome to the Magnificast. This is a podcast about Christianity and leftist politics. I'm Matt. I teach media studies at Greenville University in Greenville, Illinois. My research interests are media archaeology, cultural theory, philosophy of technology stuff. This week has been consuming my life, so I'll say that right now. I went to the store and bought some LaCroix, so that the crisis is also taken care of. And also, on top of all of those things, Christianity and leftist politics. That is my
I'm Dean, a Catholic PhD student in philosophy at the Institute for Christian Studies in Toronto. I research the same things that I was researching last week, so just go back and listen to that one. This week, I am also researching anti-fascism in Canada. That's the thing I'm doing right now for a cool article. So I also write as a journalist. That's a pretty fun thing that I'm doing these days. Today on the show, we're talking again with Derek Ford, who's a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, about the People's Congress of Resistance. If you don't know what the People's Congress is, you should check out an episode that we did recently with Jodi Dean, where she talks about it. But before we get any further, we've got some podcast house clearing to do.
Number one on the agenda is... want to remind everyone about the Magnificast voicemail. You guys have been really good about calling in. We have a few to work through in a future episode. If you would like to hear your own voice on this premium podcast, you can call us at 815-408-0745. So call us, ask us all your questions about Christianity and leftist politics, or, whatever. I mean, people have been sticking to that. No one's really asked us anything weird yet, so...
No ghost questions, which is weird. You've got a
somebody
ghost
asked
expert.
a ghost question. God, I could tell you all about the ghosts.
It's October. It's Ghost Question Month.
Yeah, it's Ghosttober.
Ooh, Ghosttober. I like that.
Yeah, me too. It's great. Great month. Okay, well, anyways, call in, ask us your questions about whatever. But, I guess it's good if they relate to the podcast. But if not, it's fine too. Well, it's fine. It's good. Okay, anyways, the number is 815-408-0745. Okay, we also have an iTunes review to read and to get to. We've been really making our way through these in a major way, so we only have one iTunes review left to read, and that's all we have. So maybe leave us new ones, people who haven't done that before.
Or if you have, just make up a Kierkegaardian pseudonym, start dropping some iTunes reviews that argue with other iTunes reviews, and then we can just slowly piece it together. Who's who?
Anticlimacticus says this podcast blows.
He would, probably.
Yeah, he would. Yep. Okay. The podcast review this week comes from My Life Is Like. That's the username. So
fill in the blank.
Good. Yeah.
My life is very good right now because I'm listening to this podcast.
That's probably what.
I forgot. Yeah. I've already messed up. We're not allowed to say good on this podcast anymore, apparently, according to Twitter. And you know what? You're just all the rest of you are wrong. I'm sorry to inform you like this. I wish I could break it to you easier, but saying things are very good is very good.
It's just what else do you need to say? It's very good.
Keep it simple. We don't need those sentence enhancers.
Spicy sentence sandwiches. Oh man, love that SpongeBob. Dolphin. Can you go back through the podcast after we're done and just every time we say good, can you edit in like a dolphin noise?
I would love to do that, except that I do not have that kind of time. One day we're gonna hire a producer, and we're just gonna be like, the one qualification is you need a dolphin noise in your soundboard. That's it. Then you're hired.
Okay, here's the iTunes review from My Life Is Like. This is a 5 out of 5 star review. The title is Thankful for This Resource. My Life Is Like says, I grew up evangelical but fell out of it after going to Bible school and trying to reconcile personal trials with God as well as a church that couldn't care less about the obvious social problems throughout society. I eventually found Marx and was convinced he was right after reading Capital. This is basically everyone's experience, I believe. Currently, I'm trying to reconcile this with desiring a faith community, which are mostly all really pro-capitalist. Thanks for the resources here. That is, first of all, I'm glad that we can be a resource for you. On the other hand, that is a very hard thing to do.
It is hard.
I mean, if you guys are keeping up with us on Twitter, you saw the big leftist Christian roll call that happened out of nowhere.
That was John Thornton Jr., thanks to him, unsurprisingly. Just doing that good pastor work.
Yeah, getting everyone involved. I mean, from that you can see that there are many Christian leftists. It was so many so that my phone was blowing up. But at the same time, they don't exist in a very proximal, face-to-face community, and that makes things very difficult. I don't know how to fix that, but it makes it hard just like to go to church. It makes it hard to want to go to church and like face that whole crowd.
Yeah, it's true. On my better days, I feel like going to like the parish that I go to is not extremely socially conscious. There are plenty of socially conscious Catholic parishes in the world and in Canada and in Toronto, but I go to the one that is a block away from my apartment. And I don't know, it's not a hashtag woke church, but I kind of feel like that's part of the challenge of being a leftist Christian, is figuring out how to live with other Christians and how to engage that community and see if you can pick up where good things are happening and push it, I guess, in a more sustainable political direction. I don't know. That's like, those are my good days. My bad days, I'm just like, oh my gosh, why am I going to go to this again? It's so sad every time. But, all my days aren't bad days. I appreciate that.
Man, I don't want to go to church in the morning. Church in the morning.
Yeah, skip to the end of this podcast.
Cool. Okay, so that was the iTunes review. We have one more little bit of the extra content we need to get through. Last week we chastised a user for giving us a 4-star review, and this user emailed us. I actually feel really bad now. I mean, it was just a goof on the show, but we appreciate even the 4-star reviews. Anyways, the person that emailed us says, "I'm super embarrassed I didn't change my iTunes reviewer tag since I was 12 and really into Toby Mac." Anyways, they say that they appreciate our answers, and also they're just a little bit salty when they wrote that review. It's fine. Be salty. Give us a 4 stars. Don't feel bad.
But if you see the error of your ways and you feel the need to repent, like, we're here. It's the prodigal son narrative is alive and well in this podcast. We'll greet you with open arms as soon as you bring that 5-star review right back home.
This reminds me of a completely tangential story, but I'll tell it because I don't care. It's my podcast. I'll do what I want. One time I was in Nashville, Tennessee, which is a fun place to be. Nashville's very cool. And I saw Toby Mac's house. We drove past it in a car, and someone pointed it out to me and said, "Look, that's where Toby Mac lives."
What did it look like? Did it have a gigantic Jesus fish bumper sticker on the side on the siding?
Well, no, it's definitely a mansion, but it's not as mansiony as you would think Toby Mac's house would be.
The Toby Maction. That's a weird place.
The Toby Maction.
I just picture I want to see that episode of MTV Cribs, and it's just Toby Mac taking people around to his Jesus fish shaped hot tub and his Jesus fish shaped bed. It just feels like the kitschiest things you could possibly have, but on a grander scale.
Hey y'all, here's my collection of Jesus bobbleheads.
Here's a painting I commissioned of Jesus behind me holding the microphone as I rap.
Oh man, I can't believe Toby Mac was a thing. But is Toby Mac still a thing? Does Toby Mac still Mac?
For sure.
Let's see. Oh, you know that he is. He is. Toby Mac is. Toby Mac's on tour right now.
Of course he is.
Anyone out at that Toby Mac concert, let us know how that's going. His look is just something else. I can barely. Okay, sorry, he's on tour right now, but let's keep this in perspective. He is performing at the South Carolina State Fair, so he's that level of entertainer right now.
Significantly high level. That's what you're talking about.
It looks like if you look up a picture of Toby Mac, it looks like he's just stuck in 2005.
He might be actually. It might be a curse. Like, a lot of musicians make a deal with the devil to get famous, and his deal was, like, you can never get out of 2005.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what he has. Like this little pointy kind of like soul patch on his
No,
face.
that's not true. That can't be true.
It is.
That's too good to be true.
It is. It's hard to believe, man. I don't know.
That is the youth pastor facial hair, though.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Frosted tips and a soul patch on your face that is so pointy you could hurt somebody with it.
I had an undergraduate philosophy professor, shout out Matt Bonzo, who shared a floor with the members of DC Talk in undergrad at Liberty University. True story.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he's the lost member of DC Talk.
Wait, did DC Talk go to Liberty?
Yeah, or at least part of them did.
Oh man, that's nuts. You ever hear about Jars of Clay?
Yeah, I heard about him. I've been to a Jars of Clay concert.
Really? Me too.
Yep.
One time they played my high school gymnasium, which is pretty wild. Jars of Clay got started at the institution I teach at, and no one will ever let you forget that.
There you go.
They're fine though. They're all right,
as
guys.
far as like evangelical bands go, they're among the better ones.
Yeah, I suppose.
They're like moderately open to gay marriage, I think. They
well, here's the best
digging
thing about
wells.
Jars of Clay. They're no longer a band.
Oh, nice. Jars.
Just like really slamming those guys. Not just kidding. It's okay. They're fine. They're okay people, I'm sure.
They're all listening to this podcast, so pretty sure we should be
I know,
careful what we're saying here.
mouth agape. They're probably going to be very upset at us.
If you are a member of Jars of Clay, and you are now or have in the past been a Christian leftist, please call us at 815-408-0745.
Good. Well, we'll get to that one next week.
Okay, we should cut this nonsense out. We have a real life Leninist on this podcast to talk to, so we should throw it right over to him.
Oh yeah.
So Derek, you I think continue to hold your the record here at the Magnificast as being the most recurrent guest. So nice job holding on to that title.
It's number 1 on my CV.
I'm sure that gets you a lot of hiring speaking gigs.
I should actually put it in my Twitter bio.
Yeah.
That's right. Co-host.
It's like
then I can get verified probably.
It's like you're the Justin Timberlake of the Magnificast. You've been host so many times.
Yeah, at some point we're gonna get you like one of those jackets that they give people on SNL after they host so many times.
Yeah. Cool.
When you're not on the Magnificast, which is, not very often, but still, what have you been up to? I mean, the big news is you went to the DPRK. That's like a whole thing in itself, I guess. So, I don't know if people are interested in that. You wrote a bunch of stuff about that. But what have you been up to this side of imperialism?
Yeah, back in the imperialist motherland. Let's see. Well, yeah, teaching, and one thing is I'm teaching a reading group on Volume 1 of Capital this semester, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, neat.
And a recent thing that happened is some students have broken from the Democrats on campus and have started a Democratic Socialist of DePauw group. So they had their first meeting last week, and there was a really good turnout. There were like 30 of them, and I'm like the faculty advisor for them, so I'm working with them closely, and they're very excited, and there's a lot of energy, so that's been cool.
That is really cool. Are they associated with the DSA, or are they just like doing their own thing?
It seems like they're doing their own thing and sort of uniting around the sort of general framework. Like they're using some DSA language, and it's pretty much just like anyone to anyone who with socialist leanings. It's unclear whether that means like social, like people who, are like argue for like a mix of both or something like that are also going to be included. But it seems like everyone there is pretty much like has, socialist convictions, believes that we need a new mode of production and a new set of social relations. So
that's great.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Dang, what a neat thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Matt, what have you been up to?
Just teaching, grading a lot. been going through this class that I'm doing with senior students over here on prisons, and it's been tough. We've been talking about the new Jim Crow, and then we started talking about Foucault this past week. And the hardest part, I mean, I have some really great students, but I have also many students who really don't care very much about this topic, and it's been really disheartening, honestly. Just getting them to like be convicted that this is something they should care about has been pretty hard.
It's kind of weird that it's so hard to do something like that at a Christian institution that comes out of a tradition that's sort of known for abolitionism.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. The best students in the entire class are all the social work majors. They already know why they care about this, so that's like pretty easy. The folks in I don't know, other disciplines are having a hard time making a strong connection to it. So it's been hard, but it's been fun for me at least. So sucks for them, but whatever.
And what are the disciplines that are having a hard time with it?
Well, yeah, so it's an interdisciplinary seminar, so they have to like all of the senior students that have to like really get into this. So students that are in like, I don't know, digital media, computer science are kind of having a hard time with it. Just because they don't see exactly how what they're doing applies, even though I think it's pretty clear that it does. So it's just kind of, I don't know. They're just having a hard time connecting exactly the way like they see themselves in the world and like what type of research they do with exactly like what it is that we're talking about. Like they don't understand exactly how like information systems might affect the incarcerated or something. So it's just they're not making that connection like I'd like them to.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough.
Yeah, at least yeah, it is tough. Sorry, I don't want to say anything else because I don't want to be mean to anybody.
Taking that comforting sip of LaCroix.
Yeah. I'll just be silent on this one. Yeah, it's cool. There's a handful of students in the class too who are like they're like criminal justice majors, like and they want to work in, I don't know, law enforcement or something. Getting their perspectives is pretty interesting too, just because well, I don't know, because they care in a whole bunch of different ways. And I've been surprised that even the folks who want to like work in law enforcement are not like totally opposed to massive reformations of the criminal justice system. So that's heartening. It's nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. What have you been up to, Dean?
I work at a coffee shop and comic book shop, and I've been working there a ton lately, picking up some extra hours, shifting some people around. So that's taken up most of my time, though I'm also writing an article about Canadian anti-fascism, and that's really interesting for the Jesuits. So that's a fun thing to do. It's fun to like email people and say, hi, I write for a Catholic magazine and I'd like to interview your Antifa group about Canadian white supremacy. And most of them are like, I'm sorry, what? Can we verify that you're not a cop first?
Yeah.
Which is pretty fair. So yeah, that's been pretty cool to do. One interesting thing I'm learning so far is that a lot of Canadian anti-fascist movements have been led by Muslim activists and anti-Islamophobia activists. So there's a really interesting and unsurprising sort of faith activism component there that has been cool to articulate.
Yeah, that's super neat. How do you convince them you're not a cop?
I don't know, just be very nice and send them all my questions ahead of time. I mean, they're ultimately, I guess they'll take the risk to talk to me or not. One group is sort of going back and forth about whether or not someone will talk to me on the phone or whether or not they'll just email me. And I mean, I don't really care either way. It's better to talk to people on the phone because people sound more natural, but I'll take what I can get. So the other two people, they're like well-known, publicly involved. So it's easier to just meet up with them for coffee or whatever. I mean, I guess I could still be a cop, but like, I sent them my little profile on the magazine, so I guess they can judge for themselves whether or not I'm a trustworthy journalist.
Just send them your Twitter handle, and then they'll know.
Yeah, that's right. That's it. Just to get out of this real quick, I'm just becoming a master of segues on this podcast, and here's another fantastic example. Moving on. So it's our first October episode, which means naturally we should probably talk about Lenin again. So it's fortuitous, providential, whatever that Derek is on this time around. And Derek, you remember the Party for Socialism and Liberation, for people that don't know, which is a Marxist-Leninist party in the United States. We talked to Derek a couple of times about Lenin already. So I figured we should just ask, how are you celebrating the centenary of the Russian Revolution this month? It's a pretty big day in the leftist liturgical calendar.
It is, yeah. And, speaking of calendars, because the Russians were still on the Julian calendar or whatever, the technical date is November 7th.
Oh, dang.
Even though it's October, but the thing is it's still Red October. Nobody talks about November. There's not journals called November, right? So I still think October is, that's the month. So yeah, I am. I think we're going to do an event with some other sort of lefty groups here in the Indiana area, and do something of a short discussion about reevaluating, reassessing 1917 and just what does it mean for us today, and hear some different viewpoints about it, and try to draw some lessons for, sort of how we organize and how we're thinking about revolution and struggle today. And that's one way I'll be celebrating. It's not, it'll be fun for me, but it's not like a, lowercase p party kind of event.
Right.
Are either of you celebrating it?
Just I'm celebrating every day, I guess.
There's a Communist Party of Canada event that I'm hopefully going to go to if I can get out of work in time, and they're doing a whole thing, kind of a similar deal, I guess. A bunch of lefty groups are just getting together to talk about it and think it through and chat, and I don't know, just an excuse to hang out, really.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. I've I don't know. I'm not doing anything other than just living my best life now, I guess. But I've seen there's lots of PSL events going on around the country, so it seems cool. Check out your local PSL folks and see what they're up to. For that date. It's cool. I don't know. Something we should celebrate. Something that's worth paying attention to for sure.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Another update we should get from you, Derek, is how's your church shopping going? I don't know if people knew this. This is kind of like a Magnificast behind the scenes, but you were thinking about jumping into some kind of church community, and I thought that was really interesting. So, I mean, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but if you do,
no, I appreciate it. This is a reminder that I have to get back to that, because I haven't been doing it. So I guess the response is that it's not going, but I still want it to go.
I don't know if you saw our recent Twitter chain the other day, but we have also not been going to church lately. So you're in good company.
Cool. That will probably not help my motivation to go church shopping.
Yeah, it's just hard. It's hard sometimes.
It is. But that's the whole thing, is that, the discipline of it is so important.
That's right.
Yeah.
And doing it even though it's hard.
That's true. Nice thing about being Catholic is there's a mass every single day. So you're supposed to go on Sundays. That's ideal. Technically it's an obligation, I guess. But if you don't do it, I don't know, just go some other day. It's pretty nice.
There's a bunch of makeup times.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Catholic principles, hey, where have you been? And you're like, no, I've got an attendance sheet right here.
Oh, dang. Again, great segue here. Derek, you went to the People's Congress though, and that looked like the coolest thing in the entire world. It was such a cool few days to be on Twitter and live vicariously through you all, seeing all of the different events go down and seeing everybody sitting in one spot and I don't know, doing very good leftist stuff. Do you want to give us an overview of what it was like to be there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in many ways I'm still processing it. It was a really overwhelming experience. But something that Eugene Puryear, who's one of the conveners, and he was on the sort of opening session, is he said, like that he hears all the time, and I'm sure you've heard this, I've definitely heard it, that, you know, there's no way that the left can do anything because we're so divided. You know, we just each have our own struggles. We have all these political disagreements. We have all these disagreements over language and, you know, strategy and tactics. And then he was like, but, you know, looking around this room, I see actually that that's not the case, that we do have a left here, that, you know, does have differences, but does have, you know, important points of unity, is willing to work together across differences, through differences. And that was really evident, you know, throughout the whole time. There was just, you know, I think people were very excited to be there. I was very excited to be there, and that sort of energy really fueled the politics that took place, and the ways that, you know, different struggles were really amplified. All of our struggles were expanded through that moment, through the, you know, the moment of the weekend. And it, you know, it seemed to be, I think, a real catalyst, you know. Of course, like, the extent to which it is or not will be seen in the future. But I think, you know, I mean, in itself, it was definitely a success. Like, you know, a lot of people came, a lot of good people came. And there were, you know, a lot of real, like, representatives of grassroots resistance struggles, both the sort of old guard, the new guard, that were represented there, that were, you know, open to learning from each other, teaching each other, studying together, and just a lot of really, really important questions asked, and I think important connections made.
That's really cool.
That's cool.
I remember, like, watching it all unfold on social media that weekend. It was such a surreal experience because on the one hand, all you guys were out in Washington, D.C. doing the People's Congress of Resistance thing. At the same time, there was also, like, that massive Juggalo March that was going on too. So it was just like, it was just like the strangest confluence of things all happening at once. It was weird.
There was some overlap.
Yeah? What was your experience with that?
Well, just there was like a, you know, communist contingent of juggalos that showed up on the second day.
That's awesome.
A small one.
Yeah.
But,
no, that's so cool, though.
I mean, it was interesting. You know, people have different reactions to it. I thought, you know, I mean, the thing is, you know, people like the Juggalos, it's like a, you know, interesting, funny kind of social media thing. But if you think about what the federal government's doing, it's totally wild. You know, just like anyone who attends this concert or, like, affiliates with, you know, has this logo on anything can be described, you know, labeled a gang member. It's really terrible.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. I'm from Michigan, and that's the birthplace of the Juggalos.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's where they have their festival, right? Or
yeah,
they used to. Yeah.
Well, the Insane Clown Posse is from Michigan, and Fago is, like, a big Michigan thing. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. It's weird to, like, when I was in high school, ICP was just, like, a thing that a few, like, people that I knew in high school were into, and to see like a Juggalo March is just the strangest thing. My 13-year-old self was just like, what's going on?
yeah, and they have varying levels of sort of spontaneous political consciousness going on. You know, I think there's some things about against domestic violence in there, and maybe some sort of class conscious things, and some anti-racism in there. But of course, you know, it's not consistent or anything like that, and contradictory.
Yeah. Well, it's neat that all of those things kind of, like, I don't know, happen at the same time, I guess, in Washington, D.C. What a weird week to be in D.C., I think, for all the normies out there.
Well, here's a segue for you. So how do all the diverse movements that did come together in the People's Congress, whether juggalos or not, how did all those diverse kinds of struggles get brought to light, do you think, in a way that was helpful? Like, we talked to Jodi Dean a little bit before the People's Congress, and she was saying it was a really exciting thing to see those different groups coming together and trying to find ways to unify and see these struggles as part of one struggle. And the other side of it, do you feel like that happened? Like, were there some frictions? Were there some surprising connections? You know, what did you kind of come away with after that?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely the most inspiring thing and energizing thing for me was to witness and sort of be a part of this gathering together of these, you know, very different groups and struggles that are, like politically and theoretically at sort of an abstract level, we can easily draw, relations between the two and show how they are part of one thing. But, it's much different to actually get like people, bodies into a room and, and to see the connections be, made flesh or whatever. So that was really cool. Like there was, on one of the days, there was a very important, basically sort of speak out of relatives and loved ones of those who had been murdered by police from all over the place, primarily Black and Latino, and each relative spoke about their loved one, what happened. And their sort of general thoughts and feelings. People were, it's important because people don't really hear from this constituency, from this group very much, other than we hear mostly through media accounts, and so it was really powerful for everyone there. And there was a lot of love in the room. There was like permanent standing ovation. And there was a lot of gratitude expressed for people coming there. It took a lot of work, because people are really poor, so it takes a lot of work and organizing capital to get people there.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I went to was about organizing in rural areas, and it was led by primarily white people who are coming from small towns in upstate New York and in Appalachia, talking about different movements there. And so to see these struggles sort of like seamlessly and simultaneously woven together through actual representatives of those struggles, not someone writing an analysis, sort of composing different things together, seeing that happen in a really organic way was something that was totally new to me. Sort of, something that I haven't been witness to since I've become, really politically active in like 2005. So the last 12 years.
That's really cool to see that happen. What a good thing.
Yeah. And that's only like one small example, right? Because there are also Filipino domestic workers who were there, Korean peace activists who were there, a range of groups, a lot of international solidarity. And
yeah, I
there was
saw didn't the Chavistas had like a representative there? I thought that was pretty fascinating.
Yeah. They came, and there was a conference actually happening in Venezuela at the same time. And so Gloria La Riva spoke and gave a solidarity statement that was broadcast to them, that conference. And then actually Maduro made a statement of solidarity in support of the People's Congress of Resistance.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. Huh. Well, what were some of you just said it was really inspiring to see everybody kind of come together. Were there any other kind of inspiring moments that you would want to tell us about?
I think a lot of the inspiration came, not only during the sessions and the sort of workshops and discussions, but in the hallways in between and during lunch. I think it was really cool to actually speak in depth with people. For example, you would be in like a small workshop and, someone raised their hand and said, I'm from like the 10th most racist county in Pennsylvania or something. Because apparently we know that.
Yeah.
And was like, I want to have this have this anti-racist action. And, the workshop sort of turned to address that aspect, and then to be able to go up to that person afterwards and speak more in depth and learn about not only like the political circumstances of the town, but like who they are as people, how they got involved, how the people around them got involved. Learning that, really important information that, again, I think, it could like or not again, but for the first time, I think those things can only really happen in, when you're actually in physical proximity, right?
Yeah.
Those things can't happen at that level of intensity and that level of degree of simultaneity, unless you're in an actual space together. And so, I think that was really crucial. And, this was the first time that this has really happened since the explosion in the movement at Trump's election. So I think that was also really important. A lot of disparate struggles, a lot of new struggles finally sort of coalescing in the same actual physical space.
What do you think about that with respect to the internet left? Because there are so many people who are just talking about how everybody's a leftist on the internet, or it's really easy to be a leftist on the internet. But there's a challenge because obviously, posting and tweeting is hardly the same thing as organizing and meeting other people on the ground. Retweeting somebody is a lot different than actually hearing them talk about their experience in a racist, community in Pennsylvania or whatever. Did you find some kind of particular value in just, meeting people there as opposed to, or I don't know, in relationship to interacting with people in digital media?
Yeah. It's such a complicated and important issue. I think, on the one hand, a lot of people how there aren't, if there isn't a left in your neighborhood or in your community or in your town or city, that's actually doing outreach, then the way that you get in touch with leftism is through the internet, and then it is definitely a big step to go from posting to organizing, or to actually, taking a weekend off to go to DC is a big sacrifice for, I would say, most of the people who attended the People's Congress of Resistance. And so, that in itself is a big step. I know that there were many people there who have become activated and who learned about, leftism online and then started organizing in their communities, and then to come together at a national level, was, I think was an important accomplishment that happened. And, even for me, I got to meet several people who I had known online, through Twitter or Facebook. We had been connected in the last year, and to meet them in person was definitely, I think it's definitely important. And yeah, I think that's kind of what I have to say about that. The sort of broader conversation is obviously a much different and a much longer one.
Well, that's pretty cool. That sounds really heartening that it worked out that way. Just making that jump from being only online to in real life is seems like it's important and worth making for sure. Something that I kept seeing. Again, I followed this from afar on the internet, so I guess I wasn't. I don't know. I don't know exactly all the things that happened, but I kept seeing different people tweeting about votes that were happening or conversations that were happening. Can you tell us a little bit about those votes?
Yeah, so the second day was primarily about proposing and considering and passing resolutions that addressed politics and struggles and organization. So what are our politics? What struggles do we support? And what's our sort of organization going to look like? How are we going to build, going forward? And so there were many resolutions passed. It was a really interesting experience, a very new one. So the way that it happened was there was a time period where anyone could propose a resolution at all. And they could either be action-oriented resolutions, so about struggles and in which the People's Congress would endorse this struggle, do what it can, mobilize its resources to support this struggle, and then organizational resolutions. So I mean, for action-oriented resolutions, and so anyway, so they would be proposed, or like they would be submitted, and then there were several hours to submit them, and then this is what the afternoon was about. And so what would happen is people who submitted their proposal would stand up to the microphone, would get up to the microphone in front of everyone and basically just present it. And the language would be read out loud, and then there would be a vote on it. Those in favor say aye, those opposed say nay, and then it passes or it doesn't pass. And they would be things like, we're here in Brooklyn Manor, DC, we're fighting gentrification. This is what we got going on. Like, the People's Congress resolves to support 100% this, this struggle. We, resolve to support, mobilize, and organize actions, rallies, and forums for the freedom of Leonard Peltier would be some language. We call for the withdrawal of U.S. troops and bases from Korea would be another example. We demand the end to the war against Black people. This includes an immediate end to criminalization of Black youth. So these are some of the examples. And this was a really interesting process. It was really interesting and surprising, because this is a type of thing that can go into it. Like, it can degenerate real quick. And because literally anyone could have made a proposal, anyone. And in fact, like, there were 4 or 5 people who didn't submit according to the guidelines, and they were allowed to, after like a short back and forth, they were allowed to also make their proposals, even though they had missed the deadline and not sort of followed the procedure. So, literally anyone could have proposed anything. And we could have also gotten into, endless debates about language and wording, and, there's a comma here, it should be a semicolon, or this is an and, it should be a but, or whatever. And none of that happened. And there was a high level of unity there, which was really, really, it was surprising, and it was really heartening. And I think that all the resolutions were passed, almost unanimously. I mean, I think most were probably passed unanimously. There may have been a couple of nays here and there. And so that was really, there's just a lot of unity. And it's also interesting because, like, if you think about the Billionaires Congress, how long it takes them to do anything, and those things are usually like terrible. And then here's this group of leftists who aren't formal politicians, right? And we just pass a bunch of resolutions, and it's like, yeah, let's just do this. Let's just get down to business. Like, we basically pass more resolutions, in like 3 hours than they do in a year.
So what's sort of binding about these resolutions? I mean, you've done a lot of interesting work on how political parties are able to kind of organize disparate energies and, give shape and sort of programs to accomplishing these kinds of goals. I imagine it would be a challenge to do that at a place like the People's Congress, where it isn't exactly a party. It's not exactly a kind of unified front so much as, I guess, well, it seems to me anyway, like a kind of important conversational space. What do you think about that? How are these resolutions going to play themselves out in the next year? Or, I mean, insofar as you might make a speculative suggestion or something.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that all of the action-oriented resolutions, one is that, like, everyone who proposed a resolution, no one proposed it as an individual. They were all proposed, from representatives of the struggles themselves. And they all entailed, mobilizing the support for the People's Congress of Resistance. And the People's Congress of Resistance is a growing sort of, I guess not organization, but it's kind of a united front network of all these groups that have endorsed it and continue to endorse it. And I think, I don't know, like, now those of us who were there, we had 15 people from Indiana, and now it's one thing when like, you read about something online, some problem that's happening in Washington, D.C., or, or even like, the struggle to free Leonard Peltier. And it's like, well, this is important. Leonard Peltier should be free. We should bring attention to his case. And it's one thing to sort of have that translate into an action. And it's another to hear from someone who's been working in that struggle for a long time, meet them, and then say, Leonard needs your support. And it's a much different path, a much shorter path from that to action in Indiana when that's happened versus like, we're just reading about it online or on Twitter. So I think that it will, I think that it definitely the Congress itself, the convening of the Congress really, is shortened the path between sort of solidarity and action.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then I think that, it also emboldened everyone there to fight harder in their communities and in their struggles, knowing that, we have the support of the People's Congress of Resistance. And, in terms of what that will look like concretely and particularly moving forward, I think, we obviously have yet to see, but, just having, like, if we do an action in Indiana, the People's Congress of Resistance is going to publicize it and promote it and, get us exposure and amplify what's happening to the United States and to the international community, which, we feel is really important. So it will make us struggle harder, and it'll make us also now accountable to the People's Congress of Resistance.
That's cool.
I mean, it's different from a party because, like, if we, it's not like we can be disciplined or something like that if we don't do something, but we still have this accountability and this sort of feeling of, of attachment to the Congress and all that it represents.
Were there any moments of dissent about those resolutions? Were there any like impasses that were kind of that were came to? I mean, was it all pretty straightforward?
Yeah. So there was, I think, one interesting thing that happened when we started to pass organizational resolutions is, so the conveners had three organizational proposals that they had already sort of worked on. And what was going to happen is they were going to, propose those, and then we were going to vote on them. But before that could happen, two individuals sort of grabbed the mic and were like, hey, we have these resolutions that 7 of us worked out, just now. We didn't follow any of the procedures or anything like that. We represent 7 people. There's like 800 people here. We're going to read them to you right now. And it was a bad play just because it's kind of the tyranny of, it's like, the whole thing was like, well, if you're going to be democratic, then I should be able to speak. These 7 people should be able to basically hijack the process, right? And they actually did hijack it for like way too long. I would say like 30 minutes. And it was really clear that everyone wanted them to sit down. But like, for some, of course, like in the name of democracy, 2 people then dominate 800 people in the room. Again, even though it's really, really clear that nobody wanted that to keep happening. And also it was kind of like, well, let's hear what the organizational resolutions are before we propose our own organizational resolutions that we just, made up. Right. So, I think
like that good Marxist-Leninist attention to, the goodness of planning.
Yeah. And like, and people were like, well, because we're not, like, the conveners propose this, but like, how do I be a convener? And someone was up there, one of the 2 people was up there, was like, so am I a convener now? And it was really funny because the chair was like, I don't know if we're making that commitment right now. But, like, basically it was someone who just wanted to, like, be, I guess, play a bigger role than they were playing. And, felt entitled to that role. But it was interesting the way that sort of like everyone came together and didn't let that happen and was like, no, this is our Congress, and like, we're not going to let it be disrupted.
Yeah.
We're not going to let it degenerate into infighting and divisions. Like, yeah, this isn't the, this isn't the most perfect thing that's ever taken place. There are serious constraints about time and resources and energy, but we acknowledge those and we maximize everything that we have while we're here. So I think the fact that it while it went on for maybe like a half hour and was really frustrating, the fact that it didn't, that it all ended up being sort of not a degenerating point, but a sort of something that actually amplified and increased the unity and it increased the determination for the process and for the, the fact that we want everyone to be heard and we want to, we all agreed to this procedure. We're going to stick to this procedure was like a sort of that all that was reinforced as a result of it. And I would say too, that it definitely was because we had very, very smart, compassionate, and skilled people who were moderating the process.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And it also, it kind of makes me wonder what you might think about Christians. Like, do you think that Christians have a role to play in diverse coalitions, like the ones that made up the People's Congress? Do you know if there were any Christians there or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't know of any Christian organizations or anyone who was there, like, in a capacity as a Christian. But I think that I was talking about this when I was on one of the previous times, that, like, I remember when the Pope had, like, a rally for Syria, and like, if you're going to have a rally for Syria in the United States, if you're in New York City, you might get like 100 or something like that, if it's like a really tense moment, maybe you'll get more. Those are just kind of numbers, but it won't be like 1,000 or tens of thousands of people. The Pope got like millions of people out there.
Yeah.
So I think that there is such a crucial role to play. I mean, I don't know if there were any, maybe this is one sort of shortcoming is, maybe we need to work more on outreach between the organized left and the sort of religious left or whatever, the Christian left. Maybe that is something that is right there now. It's sort of on paper and abstract, makes sense. There are some points of continuity, points of potential conflict or contradiction, but it hasn't been made, fleshy yet.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't take long to organize all 10 of us, so.
That's all right. Yeah, so you were saying maybe the organized left should kind of reach out to the religious left. I think that's pretty interesting, and obviously that's kind of a two-way street or bridge. The religious left, it seems to me a lot of people who are identifying as leftists and identifying with their faith, some of them have been quick to jump into organized leftist politics, whether it's the DSA or the PSL or whatever. But a lot of other folks are still kind of orbiting around what it means to embody the things that they feel kind of theologically motivated to maybe promote or oppose. Like they're having a hard time making those motivations stick in these sort of organized struggles that are already taking place. Do you think, Derek, that there's just like do you think there are any good strategies for like people who are looking to, like, maybe if there's a Christian who's like, yeah, I'm having a really hard time figuring out how to, be in solidarity with the poor right now. What do I do? Like, where should they start? How should they get connected up with people that might be involved in the People's Congress or in the PSL or whatever?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think that, the website is a good place to go, congressofresistance.org, because that's going to be, and the social media pages, Resist Congress on Twitter, that's going to be where events will be, posted, and also where you can submit events that you want to be amplified. I think, my sort of take on it is it's not really like that we don't have the right strategies or tactics. It's just sort of the like will and the resources to do it. I think that, I mean, at least, and I'm speaking here like from the organized left, not from the Christian left, but like, which is kind of what your question was. So sorry. But like, we're not addressing that. But like, I'm thinking like, because like on the one hand, it's like, well, you just get involved with whatever you can get involved with. The resources are there, like in terms of the sort of intellectual resources. You can read, you can find out whatever you want. The information is there. It's just like, one, is the left gonna dedicate its own resources and its own time to reaching out to religious communities. Of course, the religious communities that are that were represented at the Congress would be the Muslim community in the United States.
Right.
One of the conveners, I believe, was Madi Bray of the American Muslim Association or Society, because of the state repression and racism that they endure, and that they're actively resisting and struggling against, which we want to support. So that the will is there in that regard, but for other religious groups, it's really, it's just a matter of actually doing it rather than, I think, like finding the right strategy or tactic.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, right, it's just through action that if you begin something with the sort of theoretical analysis, then you just sort of endlessly contemplate theoretical questions and all the contradictions and the sort of nuances and blah, blah, blah. Whereas if you start from action, then the theoretical things have a way of sort of working themselves out because you keep them in perspective, and a sort of scale emerges where, something that when you're, reading or writing about it might seem really, really crucial. Like, oh my gosh, I found this contradiction. How can this be managed? You might find out in the course of struggle that actually it doesn't even really matter at all. And it's sort of more an intellectual thing. But unless you're actually engaging in an action, in a concrete struggle, then that can't happen, which is why I think that the left tends to be more united when there's mass movements and more splintered when there's not mass movements. Because then it's like, oh, well, we're not actually organizing, so let's just talk about like all of our differences and, let's create more divisions and stuff like that.
Huh. That's a really interesting insight, actually. Like the more time for like sitting around online and posting, the worse off we are.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Because it's like, oh, well, like, I can't just retweet this. I have to add my own little take on it. And,
right.
Building that brand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah, that's awesome. So what's the future of the People's Congress of Resistance? Like, what's happening next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, right now, the main thing is that people who went to the Congress are back in their communities and are trying to spread and study the manifesto of the People's Congress of Resistance, A Society for the Many, which I know that Jodi talked about when she was on the show. Because that's really the sort of founding document, and that's what provides that's the basis of the United Front, and that's also what allows us to locate our own struggles within a broader movement for a new society. So that's what's happening right now, and people are also convening their own congresses of resistance in their states and their communities. So what groups can we knit together in our own community to take up one of the resolutions, action-oriented resolutions that was passed at the People's Congress of Resistance. Long term, I think that we will need to have a second People's Congress of Resistance. And I think that these, it's my hope that these become sort of institutionalized as as annual gatherings that are that allow us to benchmark where we are in the struggle and assess and evaluate the past and make strategical and political proposals for the future. Because I think an institution like that, sort of United Front convention on a yearly basis, that's not the Left Forum. But is actually about, it's composed of people who are actually resisting. I think that that's definitely something that's needed.
Yeah. It seems like this year has been, 2017 has just been kind of a good year for those like big leftist conventions, I guess. Like the DSA had one, and there's Socialism 2017. and now the People's Congress of Resistance. But the People's Congress seems pretty unique in that it is far more open than the others have been, and far more oriented towards actual struggle. I mean, like the DSA convention has its own set of issues and problems going on with it for sure. But this one's so cool because it's not, it's super inclusive of so many different organizations and really geared towards actually doing. So it seems like such a good thing, and I'm glad that there's like a future for it.
Yeah, hopefully we'll go to the next one.
Agree.
Yeah, I know, no kidding.
Definitely.
We'll bring
the
pastors.
Magnificast should endorse it.
That's right.
We should.
Yeah, for sure. We'll bring pastors. That's the last thing that they need, actually.
We should bring collection baskets.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well,
you can do the fundraising pitch.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. The special collection after the usual tithe can all go to the People's Congress.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
It's true. I mean, Christians are really good at asking for money from poor people.
That is exactly true.
And that's not that's not really a slight. It's like, it's really important that obviously we're not taking grants from the Ford Foundation or anything like that. And so that means that we're not getting any money from rich people. So we're getting money from ourselves who are workers. So
yeah, that's right.
To be able to, that's an important pitch to make.
I think so too. All right. Well, we'll head that up for next year, and we'll get everybody. We'll get everybody there. We'll have our collection baskets. At my church, the way that we do offering is everyone's children get down and go and have these little baskets. So you have to encounter all these little kids, and
nice.
And if you don't give them any money, if you don't put any money in the collection plate, they look really sad at you. So it's super manipulative. So we could maybe do some of that kind of thing. That might be good.
Think of the children.
I know, right?
Yeah.
The People's Children of Resistance.
Yeah, the People's Children of Resistance.
Well, thanks for coming on again, Derek. This is a lot of fun. We were both really bummed that we couldn't go to the People's Congress, so it's just nice to hear back. It was nice to have Jodi on and kind of articulate it beforehand, and then it's cool to get the other side of it and kind of hear how it went. Sounds like it went really good, really well. So keep fighting the good fight over in rural Indiana with those students at Tapa.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Derek.
Yeah, it's been fun.
We'll see you on Sunday sometime.
Yes. Yeah,
that's right.
Thanks for listening to the Magnificast. As always, you should follow us on Twitter at the Magnificast. You can find us on Facebook. You can get us on iTunes. You can listen to us on SoundCloud. There's a number of other places you can listen to us, but those are the ones that we're going to mention right now. If you want to support the Magnificast financially, you can on Patreon. The website is patreon.com/themagnificast. That would be very nice of you to do. Thanks, Derek, also, for coming to defend your title as the most recurrent guest on the Magnificast. That's pretty good. You can put that on your CV. We'll have a jacket made for you to commemorate your 5th time, so a couple more times you'll get it in the mail. We're going to let the Illogical Spoon play us out as always, and we'll talk to you next week.
I don't wanna get up for church in the morning, soul's alive. Heaven come to earth and there won't be no church. We'll meet down by the riverside. There we'll swim with all creation. Never get tired, never bored. Don't worry, someday there'll be no dam between us and our Lord. Jackson, keep your hoods up. Keep your hoods up and you stay up late. In Jackson, you keep your hoods up. Well, you keep your hoods up and you stay up late. Oh, don't mind a cold night, but we might mind if you leave too soon. So come on now, it's still early. Beside what else are you gonna do? As we kissed in the